What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today it's finally time to talk about that iRacing 2021 Season 1 update that just released a few days ago. First of all, on the content side of things, there is the Lamborghini Huracan Gt3 Evo, which means that we got another Audi GT3. Hey-oh, shots fired. That joke never will ever get old, now will it? We also have the Big Block Modifieds, which means that all of you dirt oval guys in the Northeast will be all like, finally we have a real modified. And Cedar Lake Speedway, which is a small little 3/8 mile dirt oval for those who are into that kind of thing. Then there's also an update coming the day after I'm recording this commentary, adding in iRacing Super Speedway, which is formerly known as Coca-Cola Super Speedway, which was a fantasy track for NASCAR Racing 2003 season. Literally a 3-mile flat-out oval, because why the hell not? They've also added in a car I will refer to the Identity Crisis on Wheels, because quite frankly I don't know what the hell that thing is supposed to be, and I don't know what it wants to be, even though I know what it's trying to be. That being the totally not fictional Dallara IR01, which is not confusing at all. Thank you, Dallara, for giving it such a goofy name that collides with your IndyCar naming scheme. But then again, I guess that never really made too much sense to begin with in the first place. Kind of, sort of. And then the one piece of content that I actually bothered to purchase that was releasing despite literally all of this content. Everybody get a little love this time around. That being quite possibly the greatest street circuit in the world that isn't known as Surfer's Paradise before they had to mutilate it to make room for the tram. 13 friggin' years later, Long Beach is a thing in iRacing. Hallelujah! And to celebrate, iRacing just totally did the IndyCar dirty. Because I'm one of those guys who's an IndyCar fan. I'm a little screwed up in the head, alright? So, when iRacing comes out and says, hey, by the way, we got new damage model on the IndyCar. We got new updated tires on the IndyCar. We're bringing Long Beach. I'm like, yes, yes. And then they don't give us a Week 13 series and just totally kill the vibe. Because the updated IndyCar is finally an IndyCar in iRacing that's actually worth a darn. If I may editorialize here, I really wish this car, or the previous DW12, would have been this good on release, because it would have averted a lot of the issues with the iRacing open wheel ecosystem that didn't need to happen. But unfortunately, the IndyCar has always been a car that has been a bit of a tank, a bit of a car that is willing to kill you at any possible moment, and you're going to clench your butt cheeks multiple times per lap just hoping you didn't die. I took this thing on the old tires before the update to Barber Motorsports Park, which is a fantastic track, and there are 3 spots there that were just absolutely sketchier than sketchy. There was turn 1, you overstepped the boundary, you would die. There's turn 5, I think it is, the one with the spider sculpture, I believe they call it Charlotte's Web. Putting the power down, a little freaking sketchy there. And then there's a right-hander really fast over the top of a hill where the car gets light. Hint a wheel spin, you go through that corner a little bit too fast, have the revs up a little bit too high, yeah, you're gonna die. That's been fixed. Like, it's legitimately a night and day difference. Like, this car is actually drivable. It's something I want to drive, not just because I'm an IndyCar fan who likes self-punishment because I'm an IndyCar fan, but rather, it's actually an enjoyable, fun car to drive. If you like the Dallara P217 that they released a little while ago, this is basically that car, only with more power, no traction control, and it's a single-seater that doesn't have the cockpit turned off to the right like 3 or 4 degrees, just enough to annoy you. I mean, this car is so different that it warrants a second look if you haven't tested it out since the update, and it's a car that you're mildly interested in running on-road courses, because it is significantly better. I'm not saying it's perfect. It still seems a little bit twitchy once you get over the limit and you have to make a correction really quickly. It still does that thing that's typical with iRacing, where if you get the tires really hot, say after you had a really particularly nasty slide, you better watch out, because the rear end will come around on you in the next corner like 9 times out of 10. But that's not really any different than anything else in iRacing. Like, the star of the build for me, again, as a IndyCar fan into self-punishment, is the Dora IR18. It is the best car that they released in this update. I kind of sort of mean that. There's like a 3% likelihood I'll actually race the car next week at Road America in the Open Series. Although I will say, just FYI, shout out there, odd number weeks, road courses in the IndyCar Open Setup Series, as well as Week 6 of the Indy Fixed Oval Series, will be heading to Road America, which Road America is a track that I took this car to after the update and did a tank and a half of fuel, just pounding out laps just because it is legitimately that fun. And I didn't have to worry about, oh no, I'm going to die in this corner or clench my butt cheeks once, other than when I actually did something that should have warranted clenching my butt cheeks. Not saying it's perfect, but it is so much better. Granted, it's always been a little bit of a oddball car within iRacing, probably because it's two different cars doing two different things, but it's still the same car. But give it a go. So then we come to the biggest disappointment in this update. The aerodynamic effects while running near the wall in the stock cars, as well as the dynamic track improvements and overhaul. Yeah, multi-groove racing on ovals, still garbage, still not a thing. Did a 32-lap race in the Truck Series at Charlotte, which that's a series without any caution flags right now during week 13, so, you know, 32-lap green flag run, enough to get some tire wear in. Yeah, no, the bottom line's still the fastest. Like, it's not even really a contest, and that's at Charlotte, which is a track that is historically within iRacing just had the better multi-groove action than a lot of other tracks. Some people have been reporting that in the B car, that Homestead was kind of sort of working. Again, that was a track that always is kind of sort of fared better than most of the others within iRacing, but yeah, a bit of a dud. It's not a thing. It still sucks. Single file. Yay. Next up, there's something that I don't even think it's really worth mentioning in the video, other than it's worth mentioning in the video because maybe it convinces iRacing that this is the way forward, and this is the light. And that is the idea of providing competitive setups. This is something that I'm told is a few builds old within iRacing. They kind of started doing this maybe earlier this year. This is something that I think needs to become the standard. It needs to become the way forward, and hopefully as part of that we can get past the point where we have a fixed setup series and an open setup series. Instead, we just have one series that everybody races in, and it works, and everybody's happy, and we don't need to worry about that, because it's just the fixed versus open thing was a Pandora's box that we need to close at this point. And I say that as someone who, you know, yeah, races in the fixed setup series for different reasons. I'm not averse to setups by any means. It's just, it works best for me. However, if you start providing setups that are legitimately competitive, it's really going to help out iRacing as a whole in the long run. And I do think it is absolutely that important, as long as it's being done with the intention of eventually, once it has proven itself and once those competitive setups have proven themselves truly competitive, which is going to be the big thing here, that we can finally get back to the point where there's just one series. Maybe keep a few fixed series around, you know. Everybody likes C-Fixed, you know, Truxin, just because it's totally stupid. It's like beer league softball within sim racing. But, you know, it got way out of hand, and it's time to close that box. Haha, empty box made a box pun. Another thing that is not really worth mentioning in the video, but worth mentioning, car manuals. The cars that they have released these car manuals for, which is basically like a user guide of what this does and what that does and what the various steering wheel display pages or dashboard display pages do, have been pretty underwhelming. However, I'm going to say, iRacing, please continue. Make that the normal. Make that the standard, because I think it's high time that you start including stuff like that, because realistically, all you're doing is copying the garage tooltips, and I saw that, but it's nice. It's a nice little quality of life, nice little extra touch that I think should really become the standard. And then, of course, you have a plethora of tire model updates to a bunch of cars that needed tire model updates, because every car in iRacing needs a tire model update. Slight sarcasm aside, I just don't have the frame of reference to really talk about the incremental tire update that they did to a whole host of cars on the service. I will say, The Audi R8 Gt3. A while ago, when the car released, it was the pick of the litter of the GT3 cars for me, because at that point the Z4 was a bit cliche. The 650S, or the 12C, was depreciated in the real world in favor of the 650S, and that was my pick, and then it's kind of like Audi by de facto at that stage. Eventually at one point they did an update or something, and the car put me off mid-engine GT cars within iRacing entirely. I could not understand what was going on. I could not understand how to drive the car. People were still getting lap times out of it that were competitive, so it wasn't like, oh, the balance of performance is totally broken or anything like that. It's just like this car is speaking Swahili at me, and I don't speak Swahili, so what do you want me to do? That was the type of thing that was going on, to the point where I'd get into the AMG GT3 and go a second and a half a lap faster instantly. And it wasn't balance or performance, it's just this makes that much more sense to me. But I jumped into the Audi R8 Gt3 tonight, doing a week 13 race at Donington. And I figured I'll just go straight to that because, everybody's going crazy about the Lamborghini, and, the Lamborghini's a green Audi, ha ha ha. So the joke goes. Let's see if mid-engine GT cars are actually drivable in iRacing for me. And I was like, hey, this is actually good. I enjoy this. I can get the car into the corner without dying, without fear. I can brake down into the apex. I can trail brake. That's a thing again. And I'm not having to be paranoid of whether or not I'm gonna give it just slightly too much throttle or slightly too much brake and cause all sorts of hell to break loose. And it was a very liberating feeling. And it was like, hey, I might want to actually do a few of these races now, because this actually feels like a car I would enjoy racing, because fundamentally I do like GT cars, even if GT3 ain't exactly my cup of tea. But so that was interesting. But putting a bow on this video here, overall this build was really quite content heavy. Not a lot of huge updates or anything, particularly by that in terms of sexy features or anything like that. But I do think, in the grand scheme of things, at least from my perspective, it is kind of like a whole new world again. Partly because it's just been so long, and I think a lot of cars have been updated to a better standard in the meantime. But also because I still say those setups, if they actually work and they're actually competitive, and iRacing actually makes a serious, legitimate effort to make that the standard across the board, and in the process working towards getting series unified and stopping the fixed and open divide, and getting one community, getting more people into the cars, which therefore makes the whole splitting system work out much better and the whole iRacing system work better, I think would be a huge feature in of itself, even though it wouldn't necessarily seem like it. So that's just my opinion. That's just my 2 cents. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.